Do your job. I asked you why you missed your assignment, and you're giving me an excuse of why somebody else didn't do something. And people that don't watch sports, you've seen that at work. You get some email from the boss and you want to blame somebody else, but it's like everybody needs to do their job for the team to get better.
Yeah. And so and that's kind of like the paradox is like, I got to focus on myself for the sake of the team, but I got to think of the team when I'm working on myself because they both impact each other directly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like ants, like you see an ant colony that's massive, like it only works because every single one of those ants knows exactly, they're programmed exactly what they're supposed to do, and they do it without fail repeatedly. And that's how, if you think of everything as kind of a cog in a system, one of those cogs affects everything else because it's literally everything is connected.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Bridge Podcast. I am your host, Sean Nixon.
And I'm Jonathan Matthew. What's going on, man?
I'm feeling good, man.
How's the Sunshine's? Florida's the Sunshine State?
Bro, It's not only the Sunshine State, but the state motto is endless summer.
Endless summer.
Dude, when it gets down to 80, I'm looking for a sweatshirt, bro.
Isn't it weird how your body adjusts super quickly? That's why I thought it was kind of bullshit. Cause even if I'm from the Northeast and I moved to California, but people are like, oh, I'm from, if you've been living in a warm state for a long time, it doesn't matter if you grew up in Buffalo or whatever, your body adjusts. So
pretty quick,
you're going to be cold in 50-degree weather in fucking LA or Florida, that's just what's going to be.
And I fucking love it, dude. And it's not even, so people are like, oh, Florida's so hot and humid. Maybe in the middle of Florida where it's fucking swamps and shit. On the bayou, I'm sure it's hot and humid and sticky.
If you're on the coastline.
I'm 2 blocks away from the Gulf of Mexico. I can see it out the window.
Yeah, the ocean breeze is something different.
Bro, I could hock a loogie and hit fucking Fidel Castro's house right out there.
Careful.
Fucking beautiful.
Cuban loogie crisis? Is that what's happening?
He'll be all right. The Cuban loogie crisis. And the water's always warm. Oh, man.
Dolphins be swimming in there?
Dolphins, manatees. I told you it's turtle season. They're hatching all over the place. It's a beautiful thing.
Sea cows, man. I used to I had a phase as a kid where I really liked manatees for whatever reason. They're just so chill,
they're super chill.
Like that. It was a reasonable animal that's large, a large aquatic animal that I wouldn't be afraid of, or I could go out and walk one, touch one, because they come pretty close to the shore. Whereas dolphins are fast and they're usually doing their own shit, and sharks are obviously super dangerous. And but manatees
are just fat floating around, right?
They're just blubber.
Right by the dock and shit. Yeah. What about a whale? Would you touch a blue whale or a humpback whale?
Hell yeah, man.
Because you ever see them come up on a canoe of people and they're curious and they roll around and they're shooting the water and the person's like, oh my God.
Yeah,
I literally would want to dive in.
I want to go and touch it. I mean, I feel they'd
touch it at least.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how they'd react, but I work on my whale sounds,
yeah, and just sending a vibration to them that you're on the same page, because at the end of the day, they're a mammal. They want touch.
Yeah, and I feel they're just they're pretty gentle, especially the big ones, the big a humpback or a blue whale. No one's trying to fuck with them, so they don't have that kind of anxiety that a fucking tuna or other animals would have.
No, tuna's gone. Tuna's just a fish. It's gonna dart.
A whale's just oh, look at this little. You're like a guppy to it, so it's
look at this little monkey on a boat.
Even a shark. Sharks don't fuck with blue whales or humpback whales. The only thing that fuck with a humpback whale, I think, would be maybe I don't even know, a pack of orcas or a gigantic squid or something.
Probably. But oh shit,
those only exist at the very, very bottom. So that's
deep down
sperm whales. I wouldn't want to fuck with the sperm whale.
No. Orca or sperm whale, I wouldn't fuck with. But I'm saying a blue whale, I figure I could rub his belly and shit, like a puppy.
Rolls over. I was watching a video the other day, and these people weren't even expecting it. People go out whale watching. They weren't even going whale watching, and gigantic just. and like they did a whole flip, like in that fucking
So dope.
Mutual of Omaha, flipping over the water, man. That's on the
So
list.
dope.
Checking out
Yeah,
some of
that's
that
up
sport.
there as far as witnessing some craziness. And so today we're talking about spirituality in sports. All
Sports.
right. So your sports update. Because the Olympics just passed. And I always think like people that hate sports, like team sports and professional sports, NFL, NBA, NHL, whatever, MLB, they could hate those sports, but they still love the Olympics. They love watching with their family. And it's
It's a
normally
different.
because of the there's more individual competition, and it's because of the background stories. They'll always do such a great job of showing you their adversities and when they were young and what they're doing now and what
Yeah.
they're overcoming, and you get this connection. Not necessarily living vicariously through them, but there's always like an underdog story that you resonate with, and you just fall in love with the drama of it. And then the competition itself is just like watching a movie as far as the climax of the outcome.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it's funny because again, it's like a lot of the individual sports we pay attention to, but like underlying that is like this nation is the nationality of it too, right? Like even if you're, especially I think if you're a U.S., like of course you're rooting for the U.S., but you like as a a citizen of the U.S., like I love seeing other nations like get gold like that. I think it was the Philippines or Singapore, like they got that gold in weightlifting for the first time or the first gold
Philippines
ever.
female weightlifter.
Oh,
That
and
was the
she
fucking coolest shit ever.
it was amazing. Like that, I like that. You don't even have to care about like U.S. is best. Like it's not even about that. Like it's
Absolutely. Yeah, that is the only time though I do get nationalistic, because it's like when America bombs Afghanistan, I'm not like, yeah, fucking bomb those brown kids. We're America. I'm like,
yeah, right.
guys, slow down. But when it's Michael Phelps swimming against a Russian guy, I'm like, fuck him, let's go. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
like
I
yeah,
just want to
let's
root for Michael
represent.
Phelps. Just because I understand that it's a game within the game of life, and we're going to shake hands and hug and kiss after, and it's a competition to watch the triumph, and for them it's for money and I just like people succeed in their favorite thing,
Yeah,
whatever they're passionate about.
and it's and you mentioned too like professional sports. Like these are amateurs. Like this is like some of them are professional depending on what the sport is, but
Right
most of
now,
these got people are amateurs who like are doing it because they love it. Like most of these guys don't make money from it unless you're a top dog. Like
yep,
unless you're Usain Bolt, you're probably not making or have tons of sponsorship.
nope,
Because
yep,
I had a
only the
friend who
top
was
guys, and it's from sponsorship. And that's, you said they're doing it for the love, and that's literally what the definition of those words means. Professional just means you're collecting a paycheck from the organization. An amateur, if you break down the word in Latin, amateur
and
is
it's
for the
good
love. Yeah,
for the love.
for the love of the game. So
Love of the game.
you're sacrificing your whole life, 4 years at a clip.
Yeah, very, very different than like you got a season, you got your contract. It's like you only have so many Olympics that you can go through, like depending on the sport. Like if you're a gymnast, you have way less, like if some sports you get one shot at the Olympics and before your body can't do it anymore.
That's it.
And you
And
can feel that. It's
you can
palpable
feel it. And
in
those stories make it cool whether you love sports or not. So I'm always looking at sport as a metaphor for life, because you can always learn from it instead of throwing it in the garbage. And that's a lot of times where there's polarity and there's two camps. There's people that get attached to either side. And the one attachment is like, oh, sports all suck. It's a bunch of macho, patriarchal, commercialized propaganda, and there's advertisements and they're stuffing it down your throat, and it's all bullshit. And it's like, that's not untrue, but you're missing the lessons. And then the other side of the polarity is they're so sucked in and believing it and loving it so much that they're buying everything on the commerfuls. They're drinking beer. They're gambling.
They're fighting people in the
They're
stands.
fighting the fucking other
My
rivals.
team's better than your team. Fucking Bears suck.
The fucking Bears. And they're not seeing it as a distraction and entertainment. And both of those polarities are missing the lessons.
Yeah.
Like you can enjoy it a lot more if you realize that it's a game within the game that shows life's lessons. I mean, there's really nothing better than the lessons that sport shows us.
In just my observation, and especially as someone who's like, especially as it relates to like combat sports, it's always the people who've never done the sport that are the most attached in either camp. The people who've done the sport are like can appreciate it because they know that it's more than that. Like they know that, especially fighters, because they have like the idea of like being a cage fighter is such like a brutal thing, right? Or like a violent thing. And, way back in the day, it is a violent sport. But beyond that, like you're not fighting anybody. You're not fighting the person in front of you. Of course you are. They're just a medium though. You're fighting yourself against each other, which is like when you're in that space, when you're doing that, even as a swimmer, when you're competing against anybody, it's so much more than just this like about winning. It's like you said, there's a ton of lessons that you can pull out from it. But you got to do those things to experience it, which is why I recommend everybody at some point in their life engage in some sort of physical activity and some sort of competitive activity. It doesn't need to be your life mission to get whatever. Just like compete and see how that makes you feel and what that goes through, right? Because that's a lesson in and of itself, the competition.
I love it.
So when you get too attached to gold medals or you're in last place, like Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first, you're last. Like that can get you so far, I guess. But then after that,
hell, you could be second, you could be third, you could even be fifth.
It don't make no goddamn sense, Ricky.
No, I think that's absolutely perfect. And I love how you mentioned that. That's people that don't know the game that are either sitting in the kitchen saying, "Oh, it's all stupid," or sitting on the couch thinking it's all too real.
Dude, armchair athletes, right?
Yeah, they're all throwing all the babies out with all the bath water, and they're missing
no bath water, no babies,
just flushing them right down. Babies' heads are big; they get stuck in the toilet and in the bath water. It's a big
swirly
mess.
action.
It's a big mess. Swirlies to babies. It's a big mess. All the beautiful life lessons are found in sport: teamwork, trust, communication, camaraderie, overcoming adversities, goal setting, problem solving. These things reflect in business and in life. Like, I've hired people, I've fired people, I've talked to people that have hired and fired so many people. When you have like team captain or D1 athlete or any of the college athlete in general on your resume, that looks good, because when you're memorizing your times tables and friggin' what Napoleon did in 1716 or whatever the fuck, the dates are all off for any. That's pretty funny. It's like you come and the job is problem solving and teamwork. So what experience do you have in that? That's why people are looking at former military, like veterans and former sports players are going to get hired like that. I know, because I've done it.
Yeah, and I was this is kind of off topic, but because you brought the veterans, the military, I was watching like that. I think I shared it with you and you've seen it, but because it went viral a little while ago. It was Ethan Hawke, who's from Princeton, New Jersey, represents.
Oh yeah.
But he did like a little mini TED Talk, a 10-minute thing. And it was
beautiful.
If you haven't seen it, it's absolute gold. Just look up Ethan Hawke TED Talk about creativity. But his brothers, so he and his brother, he mentions like the first time he kind of fell in love with like acting is he remembers when they were young, they both saw Top Gun and they both loved it so much, but for different reasons. Like Ethan remembers like I wanted to be an actor when I saw that, but his brother wanted to be in the military. And so his brother ended up becoming like a decorated veteran Green Beret. And like that was his creativity, was leadership. Wow. Like that was his, like Ethan's was acting and expression and that creativity. And his brother was, that leadership and teamwork that comes with the military. And now he's retired and does all sorts of charities and organizations. But he's like, it can all be inspired from the same thing,
Same piece of art, inspired two completely different paths.
And they're both the same thing.
Dope at it, and sports is the same thing.
Yeah, you could see sports, and you can be inspired in different ways for whatever your career is, and be like, wow, like that dude just laid it all on the line.
Laid it all on the line. I want to do that with my painting. I want to do that with my cupcake business. Lay it on the line. He got up. Oh, wait a second. Feeling. It's the same feeling. It's the same fucking feeling. Moromoto Musashi, once you see the way broadly, you see it in all things. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So it's like, oh wow, he got you watch Giannis was like a homeless kid in Greece, and he used to have to fucking walk home and fucking run down back alleys to not get shot to go to the gym and shit like that. And you see him grow up in all this adversity, and it's like, I can wake up earlier to bake my cupcakes on my side business or whatever.
Yeah.
He loves it that much. I love it that much. I'm watching his 30 for 30 documentary or something. I don't even really care about the NBA finals, but you see his character arc and his journey that he became the finals MVP when he was homeless 10 years ago. And his parents were Nigerian immigrants that, you know what I mean? All the struggle, adversity, racism, crazy shit that comes with that. And now he's a fucking millionaire leading his team to victory. Like, I can do that with my fucking underwater basket weaving business or whatever.
Dude, absolutely. Because at the underlying, like he's not a basketball player, he's a human being. Basketball is just his medium for expression, and that's just his purpose. But the way the human experience unravels is the same. Not exactly the same, but it follows the same patterns. But whatever you do is just the medium through which you do it, whether that be acting, military, basketball, underwater basket weaving, right? Like
Yeah,
all the
doesn't matter what it
inspirational
is.
stuff I used to watch were never anybody in my own sport. It was always just like totally different things, but the message resonated with me, right?
Yeah,
Like I saw the people what they were doing in their own thing, and it's like I want to feel about what I love the way they feel about what they love, right?
no
And you
matter
see
what
that a
it
lot in
is.
sports because it requires an immense amount of sacrifice, discipline, vulnerability, and courage. All things that we need, that are those things that apply to all areas of your life, right?
All areas of life, it's beautiful. And the biggest thing that I see with sports, team sports specifically, is trust and communication. Those are the cornerstones of any relationship, not only a significant other romantic type of relationship, but
Yeah.
coach athlete, teacher student, employee employer, teammates, coworkers, any of this shit. Trust and communication is how you get things done, and you really learn that from sports.
Yeah, especially we both played football. Like that was like my first. I played soccer and lacrosse and a couple other stuff middle school, but I didn't really care about it that much. Whereas like
Mm-hmm.
football was like the first, probably the second sport, but the first team sport that I really, really kind of like committed to emotionally and mentally, and physically, right? And like ultimate team sport. Like I miss an assignment, like the whole play is blown up. All the other guys have to face the consequences of my missed assignment, and I have to take responsibility for that, or I cannot take responsibility for that at risk of destroying the team for my own sake.
And blame other people, but you feel like you're letting your brothers down at that point. So it helps
Yeah,
you be empowered for your job. Just reminds me of, I always, I love watching the like behind the scenes and mic'd up type of shit where you can see what the
yeah.
players and coaches are saying in the moment, not just on TV when it happens. And I'll never forget Coach Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of all time, in my opinion, certainly the greatest football coach of all time. He's talking to, I forget, maybe Ben Watson. What are these tight ends that they had over the years, the New England Patriots? And they're watching film. And already I'm nostalgic because I always remember the film room either getting praised or yelled at, usually yelled at, right? And he's breaking down the film and he goes, "Why did you miss your assignment? Why did you do this?" And he goes, "Well, the other guy next to me down blocked, so I went to get his guy." He goes, "No, no, 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 no. Do your job. I don't give a fuck what the other fucking guy did. You have a job. When 11 of us do our jobs individually, collectively we do better." And that's exactly what we always talk about with the Ram Dass quote that we don't go a week without saying is like,
It's true.
do the best for yourself is the best thing you can do for everyone else. And he just goes,
Absolutely.
do your job. I asked you why you missed your assignment, and you're giving me an excuse of why somebody else didn't do something. And people that don't watch sports, you've seen that at work. You get some email from the boss and you want to blame somebody else, but it's like everybody needs to do their job for the team to get
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. And so like and that's kind of like the paradox is like, I got to focus on myself for the sake of the team, but I got to think of the team when I'm working on myself because they both impact each other directly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like ants, like you see an ant colony that's massive, like it only works because every single one of those ants knows exactly, they're programmed exactly what they're supposed to do. And they do it without fail repeatedly. And that's how, if you think of everything as kind of a cog in a system, one of those cogs affects everything else because it's literally everything is connected. We haven't said
Absolutely.
that one in a while, but that's a big
Sure
one
is.
too.
Well, that's worth mentioning for sure. Everything is legitimately connected. And like I said, you go to school and you have all these degrees, and then it's like, but you don't know how to communicate or problem solve, which isn't that like most jobs and most things in life anyway?
Yeah, that is most jobs. Is like you got
Come on,
critical
guys.
thinking, problem solving, teamwork. Do it together, right? And that's another, that's where an interesting part of where it's like team sports can become potentially toxic if there's not the right understanding of what it's meant to be. Is when you get big egos in sports,
Oh, yeah.
right? Which definitely does happen, but I don't think that's attributed to the sport. That's attributed to the person themselves, or
Mm-hmm.
how they've been coached, or where they've been influenced.
Mm-hmm.
Because most times it happens in childhood, right? Because I've worked with a lot of like tennis players, like recently, like young kids, and that's an interesting thing because tennis players start playing at a high level at a very early age relative to other sports. Like Venus and Serena were playing professional athletes when they were 16.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm playing professional football, the youngest I'm going to play is maybe 19, but probably 20, most likely, right? And
Oh,
same thing
yeah.
for the
20
NBA.
usually.
Um, but there are kids playing like super high level, like 14, 15, 16. And it's an individual sport. And so when they're training with each other, all they care about is winning in themselves. They're not working with someone else to get better. They're just trying to beat everybody else. It's interesting because I've seen that ego grow in there, and it's reinforced from the parents and the coaches and their whole environment, the culture around the sport, which is toxic. But then it's ironic because like I'll see the few kids who see it as like a team sport, don't take it super seriously, but do love it for fun, and they end up beating all the super cocky kids because they're learning the better lessons from it, right? It's not. And that's the difference between like we talked about before, contest versus competition. And the distinction there is competition is specifically for like I'm to win the game or to win to win the sport, to get first place, whatever it is. Where contest is really just like a form of play. And you can see that in animals a lot, right? Like you see a couple of lion cubs, like they fight with each other all the time, but the one kid's not trying to beat the other lion and kill it. They're literally playing. The one lion will get on top and he was clearly winning and he'll let himself roll over. The other one will take over because they're playing. You see it all the time.
Just to learn and get better and put yourself in different situations.
Yeah, exactly. And then, martial arts, jiu-jitsu is really great for that too. When we talk about flow rolling, a black belt, it's funny, you'll get two white belts with gigantic egos going against each other, trying to kill each other. But the black belt will roll with the white belt, and the black belt will not be trying to force anything. He'll allow the white belt to get in positions because it's not about domination or winning. Because if that's what you think is the ultimate goal, then you're going to miss out on the internal benefits and what you can do for somebody else, right?
Yeah, that's what I was
at
just
the end
say.
of the day.
Yeah, it's what you can do for other people, service to others. I was going to say a lot of the top level jiu-jitsu instructors will keep people stuck on blue and purple because when you're just snapping necks over and over again and cocky, you're never going to make it to black belt. You get to black belt the quickest by how many white belts you can elevate by showing them shit and letting them get it. Because you gain nothing by snapping and tapping fucking 10 white belts in a row. But if you can get them elevated amongst the ranks, it shows both sides of the game.
And it shows, like a spirit. We talk about spirituality in sports. It shows a spiritual maturity, right? It shows, when
he gets better, I get better.
Yes. And if I'm more advanced, like technically, like the best way to learn something is to be a teacher, right? Is like to help somebody else.
Always.
And like in teams, like in any team sports you play, like when you get the superstar that just wants the ball hog, or like give it to me and doesn't really care about helping the young guys out, like the team fails because of that.
Every time.
Like the best teams we ever had were the teams where the seniors genuinely cared about like the growth and development of the freshmen and the sophomores, rather than just like I'm the superstar, all-star, varsity jock and fuck everybody else,
Yep. Every single time. And I love how you mentioned like animals playing around in contest versus competition. They know they're not getting paid. They're having fun. And it's for fun.
Yeah.
So who's ever having the most fun wins, and that's a great lesson too. You see in setting boundaries. A lot of times if they're playing too hard or they'll bite the mom or something, the mom, the mama lion or something like that, or even wolf will be like, Karr!
Yeah.
And it's like boundary. Stop it right there.
Yeah.
They don't hold a grudge like humans. You get yelled at, you're like thinking about it for like a week and you're like, oh, I'm no good anymore, whatever. They're just like, boundary, stop it. Okay. And it's like, okay, gotcha. Right. You see dogs at the park do that all the time. They look like they're going to kill each other and it's 2 seconds. The dog goes, okay, I got you. I see. I go to the dog park all the time. So I see just like primal shit going on.
I got my nose too far up your asshole. I'm sorry about that.
Sorry about that. I'll never do it again. And that's it. Because he knows he's getting checked. If you're a habitual line stepper, you're going to get checked right off the bat. So you don't want to get checked. So you cross somebody's boundary and he told you about it. So that's just, we go back to trust and communication with humans. We communicate through verbal language for the most part. So that's where you've got to set your own boundaries with yourself and with others.
And and like another part, this pops into my head is something one of my mentors, former boss, Dr. Lemming, does with his high-level athletes is a compassion-based high performance, right? Because when you view your opponent in an aggressive way as the enemy, you're missing out on the gift that they give you, right? Because if you're trying to, and that's where you see like Tanya Harding, like that's like you're destroying, you're trying to make the other person weaker so you win. But like if you want to elevate yourself to the best that you could possibly be at an extraordinary experience for yourself internally, the only way you're going to get there is being pushed there by somebody else.
By somebody else at a high level. You should be so grateful for your biggest rivals.
And that's why people love like Rocky and Apollo, and because they're pushing themselves to their limit. And the only reason that they become as good as they are is because of their competition, right?
That's it. Iron sharpens iron every time.
Yeah, the best fights, the greatest fights of all time aren't the ones that one dude just knocked the guy out in 5 seconds, and he was like, "I'm the best." It was the wars that people went through, and you didn't even care who won. Like we talked about J.J. Way Lee, we talked about some of these all-time great, battles, even in football and soccer, whatever it is. Just like you're bringing out the best in me, and I appreciate you for that, and that means
That's
a lot
it.
to me. And that's actually going to make me better. Where people think that's a weakness, like
No,
like I gotta beat the other person down. They're like no, like that's use what they're giving you, and you give to them at the same time.
use what they're giving you. Everything is energy. If you're vibrating at gratitude for this higher level that they're pushing you to, then you're going to elevate your game.
And you see that a lot, like in Dr. Lemming works with like rowers a lot, right? And in isolation, like on erg or just by themselves in the water, they'll pull a certain time. But once they go against somebody else, that time they can't go past a certain time unless they're facing somebody else, right?
Always.
It's kind of like the 4-minute mile, right? Like if you didn't have that competition of or that your person who got a better time than you, that's what pushed people to break it, right? Is
For
having
sure.
that, because people weren't breaking it before it didn't even exist.
No, and then a week after it got broke, dozens of people did it because they put the belief out in the collective consciousness. Oh, this can be done. If this fucking guy did it, now all of us can do it. It wasn't like it went 50 years without anybody doing it.
Yeah, because and like imagine if like somebody resented him for getting a 4-minute mile versus like, oh, like he freed me, he freed my own belief to see that it could be done. So that's actually a positive thing, right?
That's exactly what happened. And I always remember we told it on a live, I believe, but it's worth telling on here. Direct spiritual stories from sports, and I'll always talk about my two of my favorite quarterbacks. Which, you know me, I don't like the quarterback position. I like fucking defense and running backs and stuff like that. Quarterbacks and receivers are prima donnas to me, but yeah. But these guys are, to me, 1 and 2 greatest of all time. And first, we'll talk about Aaron Rodgers,
Trent Dilfer.
You know well as the quarterback of your favorite team. Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, right? And his reputation in the league is from like people that are too sucked in, commercialized, speaking to the people that don't know who Aaron Rodgers is, but may enjoy this story. He is probably the most talented ever, or certainly in the top 3 just on physical talent. And people usually say that he's like an asshole or he's cocky, maybe not even a good leader or a team. Yeah, they do say that he's not a good leader and team player.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, to me, that's crazy. But people say that. That is his reputation that may or may not be true, right? Last year, he won the MVP of the league, right? The league's most valuable player. It's a very prestigious award. Because of the stupid COVID nonsense hoax, they couldn't do the award ceremony in person where you go up to the podium and you say you thank God and your coaches and you fucking slap your wife on the ass and you go home and it's a stupid story or whatever. So he gets zoomed in or whatever to do his 30-second acceptance speech. And he goes straight into, you can do anything that you believe. You can achieve your dreams if you believe in yourself. Manifest anything that you want by speaking it into reality. Align your thoughts, words, and actions. Meditate every day. Read books every week. Love yourself. Love your neighbor. Speak what you want into existence. Your words are more powerful than you know. And peace and love always wins. And like that was his 30-second MVP speech. I was like,
yeah,
mainstream.
Like, that's not exact. It's not like a typical thing you hear from sports. And again, like you mentioned, that group of people who thinks that sports is just like all macho nonsense, meathead, knucklehead. That what about that was that? That's like as spiritual as it gets. That's as spiritual as it gets, meaningful as it gets. Like that.
Yep.
You could never know who Aaron Rodgers is and just see that clip by itself and be like, that's amazing.
That's it. That's what I mean.
I don't know what he won for what he won, but
and who he is, I don't give a fucking Frenchman's fuck what he did or whatever. And I'm telling you, he's that high level because of what he just said.
Yes.
Helping others and giving back instead of, like I said, usually they just go, like sports stars that aren't that deep, they try to say the politically correct right thing, which is always thanking the offensive line, thanking God, and thanking your coaches and teammates. And my wife and kids for supporting me. Good night. And everybody just goes, because it's cute or whatever. Yeah. And then the better speakers have this like deep speech about the charity work that they did and blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking of Howie Long's kid when he was on the Eagles, that speech, and J.J.
Yeah.
Watt, and like a bunch of they still take it away from themselves and put it to service of others. He went even further, Aaron Rodgers, with the God being inside you and speak what you want into existence with meditation and manifestation. I was like, wow, that was dope. And then the greatest football player of all time, the greatest quarterback at least, no contest, just based upon accolades and awards, Tom Brady, which most people have heard of. And his reputation is probably, outside of the sport at least, is just like some pretty boy that has a Sports Illustrated model wife or whatever, and he's the greatest of all time because he wins the Super Bowl all the time.
Yeah.
His numbers on the field are absolutely ridiculous. Ooh, side bridge real quick. He is Drew Brees has the most yards of all time.
Yes.
Tom Brady is 1,100 yards away from beating it.
Oh, shit.
Week 4, they play the Patriots in New England.
Yo.
300. He's only got to get 300 and something yards to break it in New England.
Against, that'd be insane.
The universe.
Most TDs, most wins, most
yards, most Super Bowls, most MVPs, most everything. Jesus. Goat of goats.
Goat of goats.
King That's goat. Crazy. So all this on the field accolades and whatever. But to the naked eye, he's got a dad bod. He's a goofy white guy. When you saw his combine film and stats, which is where you come out of college and you do not a squat bench deadlift, a bench press, a 40-yard dash, a little shuttle run between cones, a vertical jump, all these things and measurements. He looked like a fucking bag of dirty laundry, a sack of mashed potatoes, and just a
baby giraffe just flopping around.
Goofy giraffe, a baby giraffe running. So point being is no godlike athleticism. No, not like crazy physical gifts, right? But he has the best stats of all time. So a good friend of ours, Whitney, sent me a video one time. And this video is not even new, but she sent it to me recently. And it just blew my mind, not only in and of itself, but because we kind of talked about these things half jokingly, and then it was proven. So Tom Brady is on some stupid ass show, Oprah, Dr. Oz, I think it is, right? Yeah. And he's sitting back getting his hair shampooed while they're interviewing him. And it's like a commercial for Gillette. Yeah, he's getting shaved. So it's a commercial for Gillette in front of a live studio audience of like Dr. Oz asking him questions while it's like brought to you by Gillette and they're shaving him. So I'm seeing like 9 layers of like the Matrix programming as far as advertisements, lying-ass doctors, camera tricks, people in the like a staged audience,
cue cards,
cue cards, like all this nonsense, right? And I see through all that, right? So this is kind of the exact opposite story of everything else. The people that love Dr. Oz are sucked in to how good he looks and the shampoo and the fucking shaving cream. And me, I'm like, oh, I don't even want to watch this video because it's all just Matrix advertising and it's just gross, right? So I watched the video. He's getting shampooed. They ask him, how do you win every year? Well, you know, it seems like you win every freaking year. Or like, how do you do it? And he goes, well, my wife does these spells and these seances and these ceremonies, and she sees the future essentially on these different timelines, and she tells me the rituals that I have to do and ceremonies and mantras that I have to say for me to win every year. And the whole crowd just starts laughing like he's joking.
Yeah, he starts off like slow telling the story because he's like trying to like say it in a way that doesn't sound crazy, but there's no way not to make it sound crazy.
There's no way not.
She's
to
like, so like my wife is like kind of like a witch.
She's like a witch, yeah. And everybody starts
people
laughing.
Are chuckling, and it's just like
because they think of witch as a pejorative term, where I see it as a good term, like a sorceress and shit. Like the bad guys, the powers that be, used to burn witches because they were magical. So you do the math on that. So he's like, yeah, she gives me some stones and some statues and this herbs that I burn and this altar in my locker room. And she makes me do these meditations and mantras that I say over and over again. And he's like, I don't know, whatever, but he's like, it always works. She'll tell me, this is your year that you're going to win. And we win. And she'll say, honey, this year you're not going to win.
The year they lost the Eagles, she was like, sorry, honey, it's not going to be your year. But the best part too is like he could tell that like he doesn't really know what's going on, but he just trusts her.
He just trusts her. So he's hustling and busting his ass in the physical 3D work, and he's fully trusting the divine feminine that is her doing the magical 5D stuff over top of it, as far as, like I said, mantras and sayings and all this. And she hasn't been wrong once, as opposed to like what socks he's supposed to wear or whether they're going to win or lose that day, and what mantras and chants and prayers to say before the game.
Yeah, man. Giselle's a sorceress.
So that to me is how
the two best quarterbacks in the NFL, arguably of all time,
are using spirituality. Come on, guys. Legitimate manifestation through chants, mostly meditation. That was the thing that really overlapped between the two of them. And there's obviously different forms of meditation, but
yeah,
that's how it goes, guys. So people that fucking hate sports, you're missing out on these amazing stories, you know?
Yeah,
And,
don't get caught up in the surface level stuff, because like that just exists because, right, like the NFL is like a gazillion-dollar corporation, so is the NBA, so is soccer. Like all these things have these layers of corporations, but beyond that, like there's human beings that are playing these sports, right, on their own individual journeys.
And that's the best part, is the human stories that you.
And like another guy, it's like a different sport, like bodybuilding. Like again, another thing you think of, like, oh, macho meathead, like that's the ultimate macho meathead, you know, zero brain cell kind of sport. But like, look at a guy like Dorian Yates, you know,
dude, one of the smartest guys there is, and one of the most spiritual fucking guys
exactly, right? And like, that's somebody understanding the human experience, the bodybuilding, the sport for a greater purpose, right?
For a greater purpose. He goes, I just wanted to push my body to the limit, and then I pushed my emotions to the limit in my mind, and now I'm pushing the spiritual realm to the limit in different forms of yoga, meditation, plant medicine ceremonies, etc.
Yeah.
Smart guy.
So these are like the highest level athletes at their sports. Like,
the
this is not
highest level. And so once again, people that are still lost and hate sports, let's draw because you mentioned it before, the difference between contest and competition. Like, to me, contest is learning and growing to get better, and it's focused on play and fun in the moment, where competition is a means to an end, winning at all costs. And there can be a balance to that if it's a professional sport. But like you mentioned, when you're cheating and when you're not having fun and breaking down your body too much just to win a thing that in the grand scheme of things doesn't mean anything, you're missing the journey and the lessons within that.
And you'll see it from the top guys, like when they're they're obviously taking everything very seriously. They're very, very, very focused, but they're having fun. Like when they're doing it. And you see guys stop playing even when they're at the highest level. Like a Barry Sanders is a great thing. It's like, I just didn't want to do it anymore. Like when it stops becoming that spiritual thing for you, there's no heart hurt and letting it go. And like, let's compare that to somebody again, like who's not in sports, but like think about how many people in whatever respective field they're in, say, you know, like are on Instagram comparing themselves in competition with other people, right? And that makes their life not fun. That makes them put out less quality stuff. That makes their creativity go down. Whereas if you look at it as this contest, like, oh wow, look what that guy brought in, like look what he's doing, or like what she's doing, right? Like that makes me better because it's us supporting each other. And it's inspiration, right? Yeah,
love that.
Like their success can be my success too, as well.
It is. It's that same energy. You take that energy, and instead of pushing it away and hating them, because then once you're into hate, you're into fear, shame, and guilt, lower vibrational frequencies. Instead of, oh shit, now I'm inspired, I love what they did, let me take that energy and do my favorite shit with that same energy. Not copy it, but not hate it. Take that energy and create my own shit.
Yeah, competition is a zero-sum thing. Like only one person can be first, but like contest is very different, right? Like we can all benefit from each other, and it's that like I need to win. The only way to make me feel like a winner is if you're a loser. And like, that's not how it has to be. That's never how it has to be.
It's never how it has to be. And that's the worst type of competition, is not even physical competition. It's just comparison to others. Like you said, Instagram or bank accounts or any of this shit.
Yep.
That is the absolute worst, because it's not even real.
It's not even real. Not even real.
But that's the beauty of contest and sport, is that is real, as long as you know it's a game within a game and you're going to shake hands and hug after, because then you really see who threw the fucking ball farthest, who lifted the most weight, who scored the most points. You could say, oh, it's a silly game. But like I said, when you're aware that it's a silly game, you pull the life lessons, let alone the physical fitness that comes with it, out of these things.
Yeah, and then like as it relates to like your own spiritual path, because everybody, you know, people listening potentially like curious about like, I want to start, I'm on the beginning of my journey, or I've been on it, or like I'm just even curious about it, I'm not on it, but what's going on with the spiritual path. And a big part of that journey is like self-awareness, you know, self-discipline, self-acceptance. All these things are important. You can find those all in sports, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's again like a great medium. Think of it as like painting, like it's a medium for all these things. It teaches you self-discipline, right? To get better, to improve, to win in contest or competition. It requires self-discipline. It requires self-awareness. Like, what am I doing to get better? How am I thinking? Right? Like, if you remember like Brandon Moreno and Rose, who just won their respective belts this past year. These are fighters. Both of them, before they won, talking to themselves in the corner, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best, in a calm way, just repeating that over and over and over and over and over again, like becoming aware of like, what are my thoughts and how are they influencing how I play? Because we've also all seen, like, and I've been there too, the self-defeating thoughts that sabotage you when you're in the game, right? Like, I don't think I can do this. He's better than me. Like, I'm not prepared. That just has the opposite effect, right? But I can experience that physically and viscerally in sports. Like,
Oh yeah.
like the outcome is real and like tangible in my body.
Yep.
And like, if you need that tangible physical reality to believe something, sports is a great way to experience that.
And you
And then
see
you
that
go back
in
to the
life.
drawing board.
Yeah.
Right.
And you see that in life and in spirituality. People will say, oh, sports is dumb. She thinks she's the best. That's stupid. And then they'll sit and mantra, I am an abundant being that has nothing but health and happiness coming to me. It's the same fucking thing. You're telling yourself, you are the God to your cells, or you're a slave to your cells. No matter what you tell yourself, your subconscious is going to believe. It's not logical. Right.
And she's not saying I'm better than everybody else.
No.
I'm better than everybody else. It's purely a her thing. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It's about me. It's like,
that's the best part. Is just because I'm dope doesn't mean that you're not. I can only control this avatar. If you think you're great too, then we're both going to get better.
Yeah. And it teaches you, really importantly, about failure and about loss.
That was
like the most important times about, the most important, like everyone loves the undefeated fighters and there's something to be said, but even the undefeated athletes, like they've lost in training. They lose all the time. They push themselves to failure all the time. They need to understand that feeling. And the most successful people understand the feeling of failure. And like, that happens in sports because a lot of times it's out of your control, right? Like, imagine like you're in a team sport, especially like your offense, you're sitting on the sideline and you lose the game and you weren't even in the game. Like that, you have to accept that. You have to accept what happened. And now what do? Right?
Learn from it and move forward.
You just got knocked down. What are we going to do now? Right?
That's it. What are we going to do now? And you pick yourself up, and that's how you get better. And like you said, that's everything in life. So many people have not gotten knocked down physically or metaphorically until their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and their boss yells at them and they fucking collapse and crumble because they don't know how to accept coaching. They're not coachable, which is what you're doing when you're working with a group in a business or whatever, let alone if you are the boss, the manager, or the owner of the company.
I was going to
as
say,
far as leadership. Like,
because some people aren't good managers, coaches, leaders because they haven't been in a position where they've had to lead a team, right?
And leadership is so important. Like, and that's what you're going to learn from sports big time. Like, an okay leader is going to get people to believe in them, and a great leader is going to get people to believe in themselves and work together.
Boom.
That's how everybody gets better, is believing in themselves. And like we said, raising yourself so that it raises the collective, be it the team, a country, a society, the planet, humanity. It's just all just metaphors that we're pulling from sport.
Exactly. And it really keeps you in that present space too, as well. Like, again, I'm just listing off different things it does, but presence is like when you're in the middle of a sport, whether that be a match, whatever, you are completely consumed in the present moment, which is something that a lot of us, we all struggle with, right? In our day to day, we're in the future, we're in the past, we're in like, I lost that thing, or I didn't do this, or I'm having all these thoughts. But once you're consumed in it, once you can allow yourself to let go into it, you're tapping into a space where you're like an artist, essentially. You're allowing something to flow through you. You're entirely empty, right?
Seriously. You get into that flow state just like an artist.
That's a powerful place to be.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, they talked about it. They're like, everything turns slow motion. And I just see the future like a second or two before everybody. And I'm able to just move around everybody like I'm going in full speed and they're going in slow motion. Literally, they're accessing the quantum field and slowing down their perception of time, because all time is in this dimension is a perception. It's just a construct that we perceive, right? So they're so in the flow state and loving what they do so much that everything slows down and they're able to just take advantage of everybody around them.
Yeah, I think there's I was just reading, like, I think it's Krishnamurti. It had a really good quote. I don't remember the entire thing, but he said, like, and I think this applies to, I'm talking specifically in a flow state. But he says, like, we all think that, in the clear mind, like in the space of emptiness, there is no choice. Like, there's just flowing with the movement. And that's what you feel in the flow state. You're not thinking about what decision to make.
No.
It's just happening, right?
Yes.
And you're allowing it to happen. Because, like, if you've ever thrown a punch or hitting somebody with a clean punch, like, a lot of times you don't even feel it. It doesn't even happen. Like, you don't even know where you're throwing it. It just kind of comes away because you practice all the movements. But the universe is playing like a video game, right? It's just like, boom, boom, press the button. And I'm like, oh, it happened, right?
That's
or
it.
You hit that perfect shot. Or you throw that perfect ball. That's
because
all
of belief and repetition. That's the way to get better at anything. Is belief.
Like, thinking about it is resistance, right? There's a lack of, we talked in our last episode, like faith and belief, but like there's the lack of faith and trust in the universe if you're overthinking, right? And that creates resistance, that creates tension on a physical level, on the nervous system level, right? Whereas the most successful athletes are the loosest in terms of the most fluid, right? And that's that divine flow. There's that metaphor of water, like being like water, like Bruce Lee is like, that's just being empty and allowing the creative energy to flow through you. And the results will speak for themselves.
That's what
internally,
sport is.
Externally, right?
That's what sport is. Business owners understand this. Meditators understand this. Artists obviously understand this. But sport is just physical creativity, specifically martial arts, but any sport. It's what you can creatively do with your body.
Absolutely.
With structured rules of a game within a game.
Yeah, within the boundaries.
Rules are just
within the boundaries
as well.
Yeah.
Within the boundaries of the made-up game.
We make up boundaries to make things interesting, right?
To make things interesting and learn lessons. That's it. All it is games within the game. That's so good. And the best way maybe to get into sports, like I said, is finding some mic'd up so you get to see the players' personality, the players and coaches' personality, or sports movies. We talk about sports movies all the time as far as teamwork. I always
got any favorite sports movies?
Yeah, dude. I would go with Miracle. I would like to talk about. Have you seen that recently?
Not recently, but like I've seen it.
Bro.
It's,
fucking famous 1980s hockey team, Team USA versus the Russian Soviet team, which was a major heavy favorite. Because not only was USA good and Russia was great, Russia was super great, and USA was not very good at all.
Russia's number one.
And then the way that the Matrix and the universe works and why this is like a fun political and Hollywood spin is it's the middle of the Cold War. So there's either a real or a fake or a manufactured rivalry between the countries. And now they get to play it out in sport, right? So there's already beef and bad blood, which makes everything a lot more fun. And the US team is just a random collection of some of the best players from different college teams. And the coach, what the fuck is the actor? He's amazing. He's really good. And
I'll look it up. You go.
Dude, really good. And he's got him at one point running sprints. I guess you call it sprints in hockey. Suicides, literally, in hockey. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And everybody's so tired, they're about to drop down and die. But the coach knows.
Kurt Russell is the coach?
Dude, Kurt fucking Russell, dude. So good. And he's blowing the whistle, and he's like, again, go again, go again. And the fucking janitor's looking like, oh, my God, I'm going to have to clean up all this puke. I got to go home and shut the lights out. It's past midnight. He's got them running for 4 hours. They're going to die. The assistant coaches are like, Coach, this is too much. He's like, again, blow the fucking whistle, go again. Because what he realized was they weren't living up to their potential because they weren't playing as a team. He took 10 separate egos that were the best on their separate teams, and they weren't really fucking gelling together. So he says, what can we do? We can take a page out of the Navy SEAL playbook and fucking run their bodies into the ground and destroy their bodies just to see what their mind and their emotion has left. And they're going again and again and again. And the coach he's not stopping until he sees what he wants to see. And one of the kids are falling down. Kids are passing out. They think it's too much. They're like, Coach, what the fuck? It's drawing them closer together because they're suffering with a collective adversity. And one of the kids is huffing and puffing. He's about to puke. He goes, Coach, my name is Jimmy Wilson. I'm from Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, and I play for Team fucking USA. And he goes, we're all in this together. And fucking the next kid says where he's from and where he's from. And he blows a whistle. He goes, go home, guys. You figured it out. He goes, you were going to fucking run all night till you died individually. But you came together as a team and loved each other and realized that's the only way we win is one collective unit. And if that's not a fucking metaphor for life, I don't know what is. You know what I'm saying?
Well, compassion means to suffer with, right? So what is suffering with your teammates?
Dude, that's the best. That's why we were talking about military and then martial arts and football and hockey and rugby, the physical sports.
Well, like they've done, studies, but they just observational studies too. And like the closest groups of people, like people think like romantic relationship, like the most camaraderie there is in the military, because you're literally suffering at an extraordinarily high level, probably the highest level extraordinarily, together, and you rely on each other. And it's the ultimate teamwork thing too, right? So you're suffering with each other, relying on each other immensely, and that creates like a bond that you don't get any place else.
No place
Team
else.
sports is like another place you can get that, that reminds me, remember the Titans, especially, and that's a different dynamic with like the race relations in the country, and Denzel Washington, Coach Boone doesn't give a crap about what color you are, right? But there's tons of egos in the team. Like, I'm the best here.
Dude, everybody out there, if you don't like football, you don't like sports, you got to watch Remember the Titans. I think it's the best movie of all time that's rated PG. It's either PG or PG-13.
Best PG movie of all time?
Movie.
It's PG, yeah.
Ever. It is unbelievable. So what is it set? Early 60s in the South, where there's so much segregation. And this is the first team to desegregate one school, right? So now it's black people and white people, which is funny because they never talk about Asian people, Latino people, or mixed race people, but I always got to throw that in.
There probably wasn't that made on there anyway. But.
Let alone Native Americans that just get wiped out. But for the sake of argument, they got black people and white people for the first time going to school together, and the other 9 teams in the conference are either all black or all white, but mostly all white, which is even crazier. Yeah. Right. So they go away to camp together, and like first right off the bat, it's all the white kids on one bus and all the black kids on one bus. And Denzel goes, nope, fuck this. He goes, offense on one bus, defense on another bus, and you're rooming with somebody that has a different skin color than you, and you're going to get to know them. So everybody's like, oh, this fucking sucks. And the whole movie turns around when they're suffering together in camp, and they're 3 times a day in the sweaty
running to
heat,
the ground,
rolling on the ground, which I know you know about. And one of the linebackers sees one of his buddies, they're both white, miss a block like on purpose or being lazy just so a fucking black kid can get tackled. And he fucking grabs him by the helmet and he goes, Ray, if I see you fuck up one more time, you're fucking out of here. I'm going to eat your fucking ass.
He says, I'm going to hit you so hard, boy, by the time you come to, you're going to need a new haircut.
Such a good line, right? And then all the black kids are like, oh shit, he's really getting on him. Like, he's more about the team than
he's calling out is the other white guy for
he's
me.
More about the team for me, for my black ass. He's more about the team than sticking to this black versus white nonsense. So then they all raise their game and start smacking people. Then he sees his partner, the weak side linebacker,
make a great play.
Make a fucking big play. He grabs him, smacks him on the ass, fucking headbutts him. He's like, yeah, buddy. He goes, left side. And the kid's like, what? He's like, is there a white guy trying to be cool with me right now? Like trying to like hug me and shit? Yeah. And he goes, strong side. And they go back and forth. They're like, yeah, fucking, we got this shit. He's like, it's our fucking defense. It's our fucking team. Not this black and white bullshit that's all separation, divide and conquer nonsense by the powers that be.
See that team,
and all the coaches see it and they're like, oh, okay.
You see them come together, right? Yeah. It's amazing.
So fucking good.
Great. We're based on true story too, which is even better.
That's the best part.
That's the best part.
It's based on a true story, and it's not very far from the true story. Because some movies get crazy. I always like looking it up after the fact to see how much they stretch the truth.
It's a movie. Dramatization exists, right? Like,
but this one's pretty damn close. Like they just changed the character names, and a lot of it is really close. And I love how. Do I spoiler alert at the end? Everybody's seen
Don't
this?
spoiler alert. It's too.
Now, just tell a story.
Some movies I'd say, fuck it. But this one is, I think,
good point.
People go watch it right now.
Because, like I said, if you hate sports or if you love sports, you got to see this movie.
And it's PG, so it's like you watch this with your family and you guys come together. You watch it with your team. Like I don't remember how many times we watched it as a team. Like you never gets tired. You never get tired of that movie.
No, and if I'm flipping around for something in the background and if it's on, I just chuck the remote and I just leave that shit. It's too good. I get fired up every single time.
It's too good.
And there's so many fucking endless sports movies. But the point is, you don't even have to like sports. It's the personal connection and stories that you can resonate with, either being the underdog or working together or overcoming some adversity, that you can pull spiritual and life lessons from sports. So you don't have to be too sucked into it, gambling, drinking beer, buying every single commercial, thinking it's some macho, patriarchal fucking game within the Matrix. which it is. So you have that awareness of it and you learn the lessons from it.
Yeah. And in different other fields, not that they're lesser, but like in art or in business or in certain professions, you don't always, like as an observer, you don't always see someone overcome the obstacle, especially in business. We only see people when they're successful already. Or in
True.
sports, you see them overcome the obstacle in that moment to victory.
I love that.
You're watching it play out, where we don't get to see that many other places.
That's one of my favorite things about being a coach is seeing, and then you see people
see every part of it. You see the whole story.
You see every part of it.
You see the sausage get made.
Oh, the fucking sausage is beautiful. They come in, they can't even tie their shoes or wipe their nose properly. And then they're doing complex fucking movements with heavy load on them. It's unbelievable.
And going to a competition and seeing them succeed or just even facing a competition.
I've never,
right?
This ready for this inside story. I've never once so every single time on the way home from every competition I've ever coached, I cry in the car.
I was about to
every
say.
single time. And it's never in public or anything like with the flowers and the trophy and whatever. I shake everybody's hand. I leave. I do I get like my notes while I'm still in the zone of like what we're going to learn from and get better or whatever. And it's never forced. I'm just like, have this whole flashback while I'm driving of like how they used to suck and they got better and all the late nights in the gym and everything that they put into it and watching the whole journey. It has nothing to do with me. Watching someone's fucking journey, dude. And I've cried every single time. The few team sports I've coached and the many individual competitions.
That's the beauty of like coaching too, because coaches most often aren't always the best number one at their sport. Usually they're not, but they're the people that can inspire, the people that can see that perspective, like what you just said, like seeing in a single moment them from the very beginning to the end and having to be able to see that from the beginning to see where they are now from the beginning.
Yep.
And to see where they were from that spot is something that not all athletes get to, which is why they need great coaches. And that's where mentorship comes into play too, because you'll talk to a lot of people in whatever profession they're in if they play the sport. Not always, but a lot of times, like the leaders, whether it be a team captain, a coach, or a mentor, had a significant impact on how they
that's what the word coach means. It comes from the old root word of stagecoach, where it's somebody that can get you from point A to point B, like a stagecoach with a horse and buggy.
There you go.
I remember that. I remember I always wanted to be a coach from when I was young, and it was like weird. It was like funny to the coaches because I was so good when I was saying it. I knew where everybody was supposed to be. I knew the whole playbook. Bro, I would show up at meetings and shit with no playbook and memorize not only my shit, everybody's shit. The quarterback would ask me what routes people were running and where people are going. I loved it. I love sports so much. I had the things that I always just used to love. Like now I have like all these other esoteric fun things I love, but it's always been music, animals, and sports. So I loved it so much that I memorized everything. And when I told all the coaches, like, oh, I want to be a coach. I want to be like you. They laughed. They were like, yo, you're going to fucking play. Like, you're a player. And then I fucked that up on my own with no parental guidance. And
with the help of the universe, fucking me up on purpose.
The universe fucked me up real good. But I always knew, and I came back to it fucking 15 years later, which is pretty outstanding as well.
Full circles.
But the best coaches in football are not the best quarterbacks. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, even Rodgers, they can't coach shit. Brett Favre.
Let's look who are the best coaches of all time. You think
the backup quarterbacks? They're pretty good, but not great. And they have the clipboard and they're watching from the sideline. So
that's all they do. Like people backup. People don't really know unless you follow the sport very well. Like you don't really know. I think like the backups are just kind of like hanging out on the bench, but the backup quarterback is in on every single play, essentially.
They hear the play, they see the play, meaning they have
they communicate with the number one,
and they communicate with the team, but then they don't physically do anything.
No, like you'll see. Yeah, you'll see, Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers go down, sit on the bench, talking with Matt Flynn on the iPad about like what was going on. Like this is what I saw.
What did you see?
Yeah.
I love it. And the best coaches or managers, it's called in baseball, are the catchers. Because they're communicating with the pitcher, everyone, and seeing the whole field.
Seeing literally everything, yeah.
It just makes sense, right?
And
some of the best martial arts fighters are not the best coaches, and vice versa. You know what I mean?
But they can see, like they understand, they can have a perspective on other athletes that some superstars can't even have on themselves necessarily, right? Like
big time.
Like Israel Adesanya, like and Conor McGregor, like their coaches aren't like the Do you know Izzy's coach?
No.
Exactly. But he coached Izzy, and Izzy trusts that dude.
Yep.
And that guy's not a superstar, but it's that relationship of trust and mentor and being able to be inspired and learn and have that perspective when you can't have it on yourself, which is very easy to do.
Big time. Get the most out of it. And I had another example, but I can't remember. But then it made me think of, and maybe we wrap up here because we're going for forever because we can fucking talk forever. Is one of the best documentaries of all time is The Last Dance, which is like a Michael Jordan documentary, but it's basically the 1998 Chicago Bulls, coached by the legendary Phil Jackson, led by the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, in basketball. If you like documentaries, watch this fucking documentary. It doesn't matter if you hate Michael Jordan, you hate the Bulls, you've never watched basketball, or you hate basketball. This is greatness at its finest. And if you're only into spirituality, we'll skip like all the crazy, amazing Michael Jordan stories because there's some amazing ones. And we'll go straight to their coach, Phil Jackson. His nickname is the Zen Master. Okay. He got the most, and he knows when you're at that high of a level, he doesn't have to physically coach you. He has to manage egos and get the team to gel together. He was the first one in the early 90s having them do yoga, Tai Chi, meditation, walking around barefoot, eating certain foods. Like they weren't doing none of that back in the day. He had them lifting weights, doing yoga, all this. And he treated each one catered, met them where they're at emotionally and spiritually. They had a teammate called Dennis Rodman, who was a misunderstood character and an eccentric character, big personality, did a lot of drugs, whatever. And he came into Phil Jackson's office one time and said something about being hungover from an acid trip or something like that, and like afraid that the coach was going to get mad. And Phil like closes the book and starts telling him like, I was at Woodstock. Like I did acid, mushrooms. I did all these things. Like you ever go to Nepal and meditate for 3 days straight in a cave or whatever? He's like, oh shit. He's like, cause now he's like leveling him up on like party stories.
Yeah. And he's reaching him where he's at too, right? It's like,
where he's at. So now they're bonding instead of, oh, you were late for practice because you were hungover. You're terrible. It's like, let me show you some more mind altering, expanding things. and he was talking about acid and all kinds of stuff, and just really brought them together on some yin spiritual stuff, because there was plenty of macho bravado, testosterone, and yang energy going on.
Yeah, balancing that out, and just again that perspective too, right? Like there's zero, and for like any, we've been talking to the kind of the demographic that's kind of like anti-sports, but for the people who are super macho and think spirituality is bullshit, like it will only help your performance. It will only help what you get out of the sport, and it will only help your ability to give back to the sport.
Big time. Because I always mention it, we see so many spiritual people that are weak and frail and don't take care of their physical body very well, and they just poo-poo it. And then obviously we know a lot of super fit people that aren't emotionally or spiritually as advanced, and both of those camps are holding it themselves back, and coming to the equilibrium and the balance in the middle would do them a lot better. I remember the story that I forgot. It's a little out of order, but it's worth telling. One of the greatest baseball hitters of all time, Ted Williams, because we were talking about the best quarterbacks and the best players aren't the best coaches. It's like the mediocre players see the game better, and they have less physical attributes, so they have to communicate what's going on, and they make good players even better, right? So that makes a great coach. So Ted Williams, one of the greatest hitters of all time, he became a coach, and he was fired in like a week because he fucking sucked. Because when people would get up to bat and he would give them like batting advice, he was like, how come you didn't see that was a curveball and you missed it? And they're like, what? He's like, I could see it from the dugout. He's like, what are you talking about? He goes, I can see the laces spinning.
How's that helpful to me? I'm not a superhuman.
What the fuck are you? He's like, he's like, don't swing at that one. Swing at that one. That one's going to be low. That one's going to be a curveball. That one's going to be 77 miles an hour. That one's going to be 96 miles an hour. He goes, how do you see that? He goes, I count the laces in slow motion, and I know when to step and swing. And they're like, Coach, are you out of your fucking mind? He's like, I'm just trying to practice what I know and swing. And he's like, oh, he's a curveball again. How did you miss that? He's like, Coach, you're fucking 50 feet away. I'm over here. I can't see it. What are you talking about? And it's like, he's so physically gifted. He doesn't know how to articulate coaching cues to get it to him. He's like, you didn't fucking see that?
Well, he's so
Bro,
physically gifted, he's never had to
never
do
had
anything
to.
but
He
it.
sees it in slow motion and times it.
Whereas if you're someone who doesn't have that capability, it's much easier to communicate advice to somebody who is physically gifted because you know what it's like to have to compensate with cues, with intellect, with communication, with observation, right? Like,
love it. That was my point. Thank you. Did you see, this is such a side bridge. We shouldn't even do it on the mic, but I'll be quick because we'll wrap up. Did you see any of the Hard Knocks this year?
I did not. No, I haven't
So
seen anything.
it was Cowboys on there, which Cowboys suck, but it wasn't a bad episode. The D-line coach is one of my favorite type of people. Now I'm getting into stereotypes. A black British guy.
Black British guy.
So he's cool like a black guy, but even cooler because he has a fucking British accent.
Like Idris Elba?
Idris fucking Alba looks like him too. But he's an American football coach, right? So all the guys, all the South Florida fucking football players are making fun of his accent, but like imitating it really well.
Yeah.
Dude, so
that's hilarious.
Funny. And he's like loud and a good coach. So it's like every single word. I can't even do the accent, but it's like
the British is weird. Not weird, but it's like atypical because football's like an American, very American.
So funny hearing the football lingo, and it's Idris Alba type of accent too.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is so funny. But yeah, that's the key. Is let's not throw any babies out with any bathwaters. And when you're on top of this human experience game, you're looking for lessons anywhere you can. So don't get sucked in by the commercials and think sports are life, and don't throw it all out and think sports are stupid macho stuff. Because you and I love female sports, which are females in touch with their masculine side just as much as any men on men's sports.
We got the NFL season's coming up, so if you're not into sports, maybe give a game a watch and see if you can connect on one of those levels to what you're doing, learn some of the stories about some of the players. Right?
If you're not learning and if you're not learning and laughing, you're not living. That is a fucking key to life. Love yourself, love your neighbor, say your prayers, take your vitamins. We'll see you next time. Peace.